So we'll go ahead and here we are. We're live and welcome to a Garden Chat Live. I'm so excited tonight. I'm Bren Haas, the Garden Chat host, and I've got David Mizejewski. Did I say it right?
Mizejewski.
Oh man, close.
It's okay, man. You are definitely not the first person to butcher my last name. It's pretty tough for for media use. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I like Nature Geek. Let's keep with that.
All right,
It's easy to say, right? But so you're our guest host tonight. I'm so excited to have you because May is an awesome month. We're welcoming wildlife to our gardens, right?
that's absolutely right. I mean, hopefully, folks are inviting wildlife to their garden year round. But yeah, May is the special month every year that the National Wildlife Federation designates as Garden for Wildlife Month, so that we can really kind of put a little bit of a focus on how our yards, our gardens, our neighborhoods are impacting the lives of the wildlife around us and their ability to actually survive and reproduce. And, at the end of the day, show up in our yard so we can see them. I mean, who doesn't love seeing birds and butterflies and other cool wildlife literally right outside their door?
Very cool. Yeah. Some people are funny. Some people don't get the whole welcoming wildlife because there's some wildlife I can think of that I don't really want in my garden. But
Sure.
I think you can help us with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing is that, when we talk about gardening for wildlife, what we're mostly talking about, again, are the birds and the butterflies. But when you create habitat for those guys, a lot of other animals are going to be supported. And that's almost always a good thing. I mean, amphibians that are declining around the world, like frogs and salamanders and toads, will actually be able to find a habitat and a home if you create a garden that's, say, good for the birds and the butterflies. So they're going to benefit too. They might show up. And that's what it's really all about. The National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife program is really all about encouraging people to plant native plants, because those are the plants that are best for our, the health of our environment. And a big part of that is because they form the habitat that wildlife need to survive. That's how Mother Nature provides for the wildlife. And it's with those plant communities. And if we can plant more of those kinds of things in our yard and plant them in a way that kind of mimics natural habitat, then we're going to be doing our part to make sure that all of the really great wildlife, the birds and the butterflies and the bugs and the salamanders and all the other animals that are out there that really need our help, they're going to benefit too. And it really is a win-win because, like I said, when you follow the recommendations of the National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife program, you're going to have a recipe for success, so that not only will you get to help these animals, these wild animals that need our help, but you're going to be rewarded because you're going to see them show up. I mean, I'm not joking when I say sometimes you plant something in your yard and within an hour, the animal that you were trying to attract shows up. And that's a pretty powerful experience. And so that's really what it's all about. We're trying to get folks to garden a little bit more naturally, a little bit more sustainably, in a way that provides the habitat that wildlife needs, so that we can invite them back into our cities and our towns and our neighborhoods. And it really starts one yard at a time.
Very cool. So let me just take a minute here because we're broadcasting, streaming live right now using Blab, and I noticed there's quite a few people popping into the Blab platform. Thank you for joining us. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have about gardening with wildlife in the chat room. It should be on your right-hand side of your screen if you're joining us. Yeah. So please, we've got the expert here with us and anxious to answer any questions you may have. David, what would you recommend to someone for the first steps with welcoming wildlife into their backyard?
Yeah. So I think one of the simplest and easiest things that someone can do if they want to make their yard more wildlife friendly is to put out a bird bath. Water is one of the 4 components of habitat. And those are food, water, cover, and places where the wildlife can raise their young or reproduce. And so those are the 4 things that the National Wildlife Federation, we try to educate people about via our website and, live streams like this and the Twitter chat we're going to do afterward, and a whole wide variety of other ways. And so if you provide those 4 things, you're going to create a full habitat. But water is one of the things that I think is most likely to be missing from, the typical backyard, right? So most of us have some vegetation that is probably providing some food or some shelter, or places to raise young, that kind of thing. But not everybody has a water source. So you don't have to go out and put in a big elaborate water garden. That would be great, and lots of wildlife would use that. But honestly, a simple bird bath will do because it works. Birds and other wildlife will come and get a drink at something as simple as a bird bath. It's pretty easy to maintain. You want to make sure that you keep the water fresh. Obviously, you don't want to dump it out every couple days. In fact, that will actually make sure that you don't breed any mosquitoes in it. That's probably the number one question that people have when you talk about a water feature in the garden, especially a wildlife-friendly water feature is, oh, well, I don't want it to become a mosquito breeding spot. So how do I avoid that? Very simple. You just empty it out every couple days, because mosquitoes take about a week to go from hatching out of their egg through their aquatic larval phase until they emerge as the winged adult. And that's when the female will, try to bite you and drink your blood. The males actually don't do that, in case you didn't know. And in fact, the males, just like butterflies, drink flower nectar. So I know I probably won't make you love mosquitoes, but they do play a role, and they do pollinate the plant. So it's as annoying as they can be to us. They do have a role out there in the world, but obviously you don't want to make it easy for them to breed in your yard. So again, simple first step thing: put out a bird bath, and I guarantee you're going to start seeing really awesome birds showing up. And just like I said, dump it out every 2 or 3 days. Fill it with clean water as often as you need to. Periodically, you want to wipe it out. You can use a little bit of vinegar solution that'll disinfect it, rinse it out really well, and just keep it filled. It's a really simple thing that almost anybody can do. And you don't have to go out and even buy a bird bath. I actually, in my yard, I live in Washington, D.C., and I have a drainage dish from a terracotta flower pot. And I fill that with water, and it sits on a little recycled log that I picked out of the trash. Somebody had a tree cut down, and they were throwing all these logs down the road for me. And I was like, well, I'm going to recycle that. And so now it's a cool little habitat feature in my garden. And let me tell you, the birds show up and drink there. The butterflies show up and drink there. The bees show up and drink there. So something as simple as a bird bath can be one thing that you can do to get yourself started down the path of creating this space in your own yard that is good for wildlife.
That's pretty cool. That's right. So the mosquito actually they pollinate too? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's they're not significant pollinators of most plants. I do know that there is one orchid species that is pollinated specifically by mosquitoes. And so again, I just use that to illustrate that, just because animals, are not convenient to us doesn't mean that they don't have a, sort of a role in the ecosystem. A lot of times, people ask the question, well, what role do mosquitoes have? Why do they exist other than to annoy us? They exist because they exist, and that's just the way it is. But like I said, we obviously don't want to be creating spaces where mosquitoes are going to breed in our yard, because they are an annoyance. And, in some cases they can spread diseases and things like that. So, but again, really simple with your bird bath, just keep it clean and dump it every 2 or 3 days. And any mosquito eggs or larvae in there will just get washed right out. And your bird bath will never produce one adult mosquito. Simple.
I have like a big concrete heirloom one. It's probably close to 100 years old, right? And I like to play with the hose. I just kind of squirt it really good and like power wash it.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Yeah.
Water the plants on the other side of it.
That's right. Yeah,
that works. So we have a question in the chat room. Treasure Journey is asking, does it make a difference if the water is moving, or does it need to be still like a bird bath?
So I'm guessing that's in relation to the mosquitoes. Yeah, so mosquitoes generally like a still body of water where the females can sort of land on the water surface and lay their eggs. So if you make your water feature for wildlife move, then that's going to deter mosquitoes from breeding there. So if you do have a garden pond or a water garden, consider putting in, sort of a pump and get a little waterfall action going on. Most folks that have a backyard water garden like that typically have that kind of thing going on. And that will go a long way in making sure that the mosquitoes are not breeding there. In your bird bath, same thing. In a bird bath, most bird baths are going to just be still standing water. And like I said, the way you deal with the mosquitoes is to just dump it out every couple days. But you can also get things like there's this thing called a water wiggler. And it's basically this device that you can place in your bird bath that it kind of vibrates the water and it keeps the surface of the water kind of doing this. And the birds don't care. They don't notice, but it deters mosquitoes from breeding there. So but here's the thing with mosquitoes. It's usually not your wildlife water feature that is responsible for the mosquitoes that are out in your yard, right? Usually it's things like little pools of water in your gutters. If you have some leaves up there that can cause water to pool. A lot of times it's like your kids' play equipment or their toys that are left outside and any other kind of debris that's out there. So you want to eliminate those standing bodies of water and you really won't have any issues with mosquitoes. But I don't want to talk about mosquitoes the whole time because they're the least cool of the backyard kinds of wildlife that you can attract. Yeah. Let's talk about butterflies, okay? Everybody loves butterflies. They're really cool insects. And to me, they're a great example of the fact that when we say garden for wildlife at the National Wildlife Federation, we're not talking about attracting cougars or bears to your yard, right? We're talking about birds and butterflies and again, other small wildlife that can coexist with us and, sort of be appropriate for living in our cities and our towns and our neighborhoods, right? And so butterflies are insects and insects count as wildlife. A lot of people don't think of that. A lot of people think of wildlife maybe it's just furry animals, or maybe they'll lump birds in there. But, insects are wildlife. Frogs are wildlife. Even small mammals like the chipmunks or other critters like that, these are all appropriate wildlife that we can help support. And so for butterflies, here's some basic tips that I can give to get you started on creating a butterfly garden. First thing you probably want to think about is the life cycle of the butterfly. So adult butterflies are out there, and most species like to drink nectar from flowers. There are some species, however, that are not quite as specialized for drinking flower nectar. And what they like to do is drink up the liquefying, rotting fruit that they might find on the forest floor, or they even sometimes will be found drinking up the fluids from animal dung or even rotting animal carcasses. So, next time you see your beautiful butterfly flying through your yard, remember that it might have just eaten some animal poop. They all don't eat just flower nectar. But, you want to think about providing food for the adults. And in most cases, that's going to be beautiful, blooming, native plants, preferably, that are going to provide lots of nectar. But butterflies in that adult phase of life, when they have the wings and they're beautiful and they're flying around, really what their main goal is to try to find a mate and then for the females to lay eggs. And butterflies have a very codependent relationship with the native plants. Over the course of hundreds of thousands of years through coevolution, butterflies have evolved for their caterpillars to be resistant to the toxins that are in just a few different species of plants, okay? And every different butterfly species has a different set of plants that its caterpillars can eat. And we call those plants host plants. So you're gonna be much more successful at attracting the butterflies if not only do you plant the nectar plants that the adults are looking for, but if you also plant the host plants. Because the females, while they're gonna come to your yard and get a drink of nectar, they're really gonna be attracted if you have their host plant, because what they really wanna do, again, is lay eggs. And where the females go, the males follow. So, you wanna think about those two things as far as your plants go. Plant blooming plants that are gonna provide nectar, and then, it's pretty simple to find great info on host plants for butterflies and moths. And in fact, if you go to the National Wildlife Federation's website, which is linked right there, right below Bren, we've got some great resources and lists of some of the host plants. We're working on a new resource called the Native Plant Finder that is going to allow you, when you put your zip code in, it's going to give you a list of the plants native to your zip code that support the most butterfly and moth caterpillars. So that's going to be an amazing tool. We're about to make that live sometime in the next week or two. So stay tuned. So think about food for both the adults and think about food for the caterpillars, which is the places to raise young habitat component. And then as far as the other two components, food, water, cover, places to raise young, the other two are water and cover. Cover is easy. The same plants that are going to provide food to the butterflies are going to be the cover that they're going to use to get out of the bad weather. When there's a bad rainstorm, butterflies will hide in the vegetation. So your same plants that are going to be providing food for the adults that are going to be a place to raise young, the host plants, if you plant them densely. So in other words, don't just plant one plant in the middle of your lawn. Plant a big patch. Not only is that going to be beautiful, it's going to attract more butterflies, and it'll be a source of cover for not only them, but birds and other animals as well. And then the last one is water. And butterflies generally won't come and drink water out of something like a garden pond. But if you fill, again, a bird bath or just a shallow dish with some pebbles and a little bit of water so they don't feel afraid like they're going to get stuck in the water and drown, they can land on the rock and get a little bit of a drink. Or even better, if you do the same thing, except fill that bird bath or dish with mud, the butterflies actually engage in a natural behavior called puddling, where they come to mud puddles and they drink up the muddy water, which is actually filled with minerals from the soil. So again, some simple tips to provide a great butterfly habitat. Lots of blooming plants. Make sure you plant the caterpillar host plants. Make a mud puddle, and I'm here to tell you, I'm giving you official permission that a mud puddle is okay to have in your yard or your garden. And again, places to raise young as those host plants. It's as simple as that. Lots of folks are probably already providing these 4 elements of habitat in some way, shape, or form, and you might not even know it. And again, I encourage folks to go to our website. Again, it's linked right there. It's nwf.org/garden. And we've got it all organized according to those 4 components of habitat. So you can really kind of read up on what they are and how you can provide them for a whole host of different wildlife species. And then once you do that, what we hope folks will do is choose to have their gardens certified by the National Wildlife Federation. And basically all it is you providing those 4 elements of habitat and then committing to maintain your garden in a natural, environmentally friendly, sustainable way. So that's things like, trying not to use pesticides, planting native plants, keeping your cat inside so it's not killing all the wildlife that you're attracting. And there's lots of different options on how you can provide those habitat components and how you can garden sustainably. And it's all right there on the website. When you're ready, you can click that certify button and it'll take you right through the process. If you're not ready for that, you can actually kind of join the community, this movement of wildlife gardeners, just by signing up for our newsletter. It's totally free. It's an e-newsletter. I actually write a lot of the articles and I edit it together every month. So it's our expert tips coming to you directly from us. It's a great way to sort of get that monthly, idea on what you can do in your own garden to make it better for wildlife. And for Garden for Wildlife Month, if you sign up for the newsletter, we're actually offering a 15% discount on a bird feeder that we're offering through our catalog. And, it's kind of neat. And, feeders are great. Feeders are a great way to supplement the foods that the native plants are going to provide. And they're a great way to attract birds right to a regular spot every day so that you can see and enjoy them. So it's kind of a good deal if you ask me. So again, if folks head over to nwf.org/garden, you can sign up for the newsletter, you can get the discount, you can read more about all of the habitat components, lots of, again, our expert tips. And when you're ready, you can certify your garden as a certified wildlife habitat.
Very cool. This is very exciting. We've got quite a few people who just popped in the chat room. Thank you for joining us live. Please, if you have any questions about welcoming wildlife to your garden, please ask the questions. We've got the expert here, David of National Wildlife Federation. I can't believe all you do. you are like all over the place too. Your morning shows and late night shows on the other end of the country, right?
That's right. Yeah, I keep busy.
Yeah.
My job at the National Wildlife Federation is, as naturalist, is to really get out there into the world and help people be inspired to want to protect wildlife. And so, I obviously am very passionate about the whole Garden for Wildlife program. It's something that is near and dear to my heart, and I've been very involved in for a long time at National Wildlife Federation. But yeah, I do lots of TV appearances and, to promote the conservation work, both in our backyards, all the way out to the wilderness areas and maybe more, wild wildlife that the National Wildlife Federation is working to protect and save right here in North America. So yeah, if, I think folks can link to my Twitter page from here. Yeah. That's a great way to kind of keep up to date on where I'm going to be on TV next. In fact, just before we went live, I was planning my next Today Show appearance, putting together all my notes and my talking points and my animal list, because I'm going to bring on some live ambassador animals to share with the viewers, how cool they are and why they should want to get involved with the National Wildlife Federation protecting them.
That's very cool. I wish you could have brought an animal with you today, but
well, you know what? I have my dog locked on the other side of that. He doesn't come bark, so maybe I can release him. But other than that, I mean, actually, I'm glad you said that, Brian, because another important thing that you want to do when you create a wildlife-friendly garden is make sure that you critter-proof your house, right? We love the wildlife. We want to provide a home for them. We just don't want them living in our homes, right? So I always recommend that. This is good advice regardless of whether or not you're deliberately planting a garden to attract wildlife. Hopefully everybody listening tonight is going to go out and do that if they're not already. But either way, you really should just take a few minutes to look at your roof line. Make sure there's no cracks or crevices where birds or squirrels or even bats can get in. Do the same thing along your foundation. Make sure that if you've got a crawl space or even a basement, again, that there's no access points for wildlife, because they'll take advantage of it. They'll use it as a source of cover. Make sure you have screens in your windows. You wouldn't believe the number of emails or phone calls I get every year when people say, "Oh, I've got a bird in my house," and it's because they open their window or they left their door open, and there's screens, so the animals sometimes get in. So really important to do that. It's just a simple thing, but it'll help avoid conflicts with the wildlife. And again, that's what we're all about, helping the wildlife. But if we let them come into our homes, that's not really a good thing.
Yeah. That's funny. You brought back an old memory I hadn't thought of for years. When I was younger, I lived in town in a tall, old, like a historic home, and one of the closet windows kind of vented open, and there was no screen. And sometimes my mom would open it, and a bat would get in because the trees,
That's
one
what
of
happens,
those tall old homes,
Yeah. Wildlife are looking for homes, so much better to provide a home for them with your plant material. You can also do things like put up a bat house. Bat houses do work if you get the right kind of bat house that's built properly, and if you mount it in the correct way. And so I think a lot of people go wrong with bat houses because they get them and they're too small. Bat houses really should be big, multiple chambers, at least 24 inches tall by at least about 18 inches wide, and with at least 2 chambers if possible. And because bats they're social animals, and a lot of times it's believe it or not, it's female bats using bat houses, and they form these maternal colonies, and all the female bats will roost in those bat houses at night, and that's where they have their babies. So the more space you can provide, the better. But then key is don't hang it on a tree. Bats normally roost in trees. A lot of species, right? And for some reason, if you hang a bat box in a tree, they tend to not use it, even though they normally roost in that kind of habitat. I think it's because they feel like it's more exposed to predators. Like a raccoon or a snake could just easily climb up there and get them. So the best way to install a bat house in your yard is to hang it on the side of your house, or to put it mounted on a pole, at least 12, even better, 15 feet off the ground. Bats don't like to be too close to the ground. Again, it gives them, it makes them vulnerable to predators. So if you get a bat house, again, you want a big one, you want to mount it on the side of the building or on a pole 12 to 15 feet off the ground. And the National Wildlife Federation actually has a bunch of not only bat houses, but bird houses and bird baths and feeders and a whole bunch of other products that I personally reviewed and picked that are part of our Garden for Wildlife program. So if you're looking for those kinds of things to supplement the habitat that you're providing with all those great native plants that you're going to put in, you can get them directly from National Wildlife Federation. And the best part is that all of those proceeds from the sale of those items go right back into our programs to help us protect wildlife and offer programs like the Garden for Wildlife program. So it's a double win. You're going to help the wildlife in your yard. You're also going to be supporting the mission of the National Wildlife Federation.
Very cool. So I put a link to the shop there. Unfortunately, the picture doesn't come up, but
thanks. Yeah, perfect.
But if you go to nwf.org, there's a link right there on the page. It's a great website. You guys recently redid that, didn't you?
Yeah, in fact, for Garden for Wildlife Month 2016, we gave our website a bit of a facelift. So if you've been to our website, in the past, you definitely want to head back because it's got a whole new look and feel. We've reorganized it. We've got a bunch of really great new information up there that is going to, again, provide you with practical tips and our expert advice on how to best attract birds and butterflies and other wildlife right to your yard.
Very cool. So we're giving a book away tonight on Garden Chats. We should talk about your book.
Sure. Yeah. What do you want to know?
It's a great book. And actually, it has basically everything you really need to know to welcome the wildlife to your garden. I want to note there, someone's in the chat room, and they said that they have gators, eagles, owls, hawks, all that. So their 8-pound dog isn't allowed to play out there alone.
Yeah. No, that. Thank you for thinking about the wildlife and also keeping your pets safe from wildlife. Yeah. That's a two-way street. Whether or not we create a wildlife-friendly garden, some of these animals are out there, and 99.9999% of the time, there's never any issue. But you're right. If you do live in an area, say where there's alligators, not really a good idea to let your small dogs wander around by themselves down by the water, at dusk, because that's when alligators are naturally hunting. Now, most of us don't have alligators in our yard, and again, there's not going to be much of an issue. The bigger issue, frankly, is the impact that our pets have on wildlife. Yeah. Domesticated cats have an enormous unnatural toll on the wildlife. They kill billions with a bee, birds every year. And so, not the cat's fault. They're just doing what comes naturally. But, if we're being responsible, we're in charge of cats and dogs. They're domesticated species. We brought them here. It's up to us to keep the wildlife safe from them, and vice versa. An indoor cat lives about twice as long as a cat that goes indoors and outdoors. So it's better for your cats too. So yeah, that's a good point. You want to, we want to keep our pets safe, but we want to keep the wildlife safe from our pets just as much.
Yeah. I guess the alligators were there first, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. But yeah, going back to my book, it's called Attracting Birds, Butterflies, and Other Backyard Wildlife. And it's a how-to book. So I wrote it so that the beginner could pick this up and not feel intimidated and get some really good, simple, practical tips and advice from an expert on how to create a wildlife-friendly garden. But I also did it in a way that I hope that maybe people with more gardening expertise, or even folks that have been doing the wildlife gardening thing for a while, would also maybe pick up a new tip or trick, or at least just be inspired. I've got a lot of really beautiful photos in there. I've got how-to projects and plant lists and diagrams. So check it out. And again, when you purchase the book from the National Wildlife Federation, that goes right back in to support our program. So not only, again, are you going to get a great book, but you're going to help us out and help us continue to do our work to protect wildlife.
Very cool. So I know we're getting to the top of the hour here, and we need to scuttle over to Twitter to Garden Chat. But, there's so many of you in the chat room right now. If you have any questions at all for David, please feel free. You can comment there. We could probably take a call in if somebody wanted to come on live and ask a question. That would be great. So this has been so much fun.
And again, we're going to head over to Twitter in a second. So if you just tweet and put in #GardenChat, I'm going to see it for the next hour, so we can pick it up there. And of course, like I mentioned, follow me on Twitter. You can find me online. I'm on all over social media, as Bren knows. So that's a great way to follow up after this live stream, after the Twitter chat. If you still have questions and you want me to chat with you, I'm on Facebook and so on and so forth. So, don't forget about that as well.
Yes, how exciting. So this was fun, wasn't it? You like Blab?
Yeah, this is actually, I've not used this format before, but I like it. It's kind of concise. I can see all the chat. I can see the links that you're putting there. I can see you.
Yeah,
I like it. We can do this again.
Very fun. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and special thank you to David. I hope you guys will click on the little circle there on Blab and follow him. If not, he's really easy to find on Twitter, just at DM. I'm going to spell the last name. DM.
You know what? Just look up Nature Geek. It's easier than spelling my name. Nature Geek is my handle.
Right. It does come up.
Yeah. And in fact, if you Google Nature Geek at nwf.org, if you just put that into your web browser, it'll take you right to my website, and all of the links to all of my social media pages are there. I also have a list of all the different places where I'm going to be appearing on TV. So that's probably the one-stop shop if you want to go somewhere to figure out how to follow me. But yeah, absolutely, I encourage you to get in touch on social media. And of course, follow Bren too. this lady knows what's going on in the world of gardening, and she can always track me down too and connect you. So
thank you. Well, you guys are doing some great things over at National Wildlife Federation. People, please visit their website. It's very easy, nwf.org, right? Got that? Yeah.
Yep. /garden. That'll take you right to our Garden for Wildlife page. And you can, again, learn all sorts of great info that hopefully you didn't know before about how to attract birds and butterflies and all sorts of other wildlife.
And May is Garden for Wildlife, so be sure, tweet out. I'd love to see what you're doing to welcome wildlife to your garden. Use the hashtag Garden Chat and tag David.
That's right, yeah. And I want to see that stuff too, yeah, so definitely tag me. And who knows, we might share your tips, your ideas, even your photos, if you give us permission, with others on Twitter, on Facebook, on live streams like this. We love the sharing. It's really all about community. We reach millions of people every year. We've got over almost 200,000 certified wildlife habitats. So when you do this, you really are kind of joining a really special group of gardeners. You're not just gardening to make a pretty yard. You're not just planting flowers that are going to increase your property value. You're actually making a difference, and that is pretty huge. It's significant, and the National Wildlife Federation really wants to know about it. We want to recognize you. We want to help you do even more for wildlife, and we know after doing this for 43 years that you're going to love it. I mean, when people do even the basic stuff, it makes a difference, and you are going to see the birds show up. You are going to see the butterflies show up, and that's a reward in and of itself. But yeah, so check out our website, nwf.org. It's May is Garden for Wildlife Month, so sign up for free for our newsletter. That way, we'll be able to get you great info every month, and when you do, you're going to get a 15% discount on a really cool bird feeder that we just launched. So hopefully you all check it out.
Very cool. Thanks again for joining us on Garden Chat Live. See you over on the hashtag Garden Chat.
All right.